Just to say that the session will be recorded and will be available via comms online, so people can access these sessions from each day if they want to, and you want to share them with your teams and things if there's something of particular interest. So yeah, so brilliant. So just let everyone know the recording. So Anita, do you want to just put up, so obviously the reason why we're here today is it's International Nurses Day tomorrow, which would be May the 12th, or is May the 12th, should I say, for Florence Nightingale's birthday. But obviously from an LPT point of view, we're being a bit greedy and celebrating nurses all week. So there's sessions going on all week.
Okay, thanks.
So next slide, Anita, please. So for those, I think I do know everybody that's on the call. If you don't know me, I'm Amanda Hemsley. I'm the lead infection prevention control nurse for LPT, and I will be chairing or leading on this session for the next hour, which is learning from the pandemic. You'll be glad to hear that you won't really be listening to me talking. We've got some very motivational speakers with some excellent work streams that have been participating in. So just a few etiquette elements whilst we've got the meeting going. So Anita, if you could bring up the slide, please. So obviously, as with any teams, if you can keep your microphone on mute unless you're obviously the speakers, just so that everyone can hear and then we haven't got any background noise. There's the hands up facilitative button if you want to say something. We will be doing question and answers at the end, but if you want to ask something as you go along, use that, please. Or you can always put a question in the chat box. The other thing is, I know the weather, it's certainly not great where I am today. It's pouring down and we've got a bit of thunder. So some people might want to turn their cameras off if your connection isn't great. But what I would say is, obviously, if the speakers can have cameras on, because it's quite nice to be able to see people's faces and not just blank screens when you're talking to people. That would be great. Okay. Next slide, Anita. So this is the agenda. So we've got a number of speakers, which I'll introduce as each section. So if we move on, Anita, please. And then I've mentioned the fact that May the 12th is the birth of Florence Nightingale, and you know, she's considered the founder of modern nursing. But I mean, if any of you listened to the session yesterday, we had a whole raft of celebrations of different nurses across different geographical areas and also different years and centuries. So you know, it's clear whilst we celebrate Florence Nightingale, we're certainly celebrating International Nurses Day as well. Normally we'd have a conference of some sort, but obviously with COVID, we're not able to do that, so we're doing it via Teams, and our learning from the pandemic today is our session anyway. Okay, next slide, Anita, please. And then you will have maybe seen the message from Anne Scott, which I'm not going to read out, but message really is around having time to pause at some point to reflect and celebrate the work that nurses do in whatever guise we do them, whether it be on the shop floor, front line, behind the scenes, supportive. You know, every person counts. So I think it's really important to recognise those elements, and so that we can showcase the work that we do. Okay, so just before we go on to Sam and Mark, just a few points for me really to think around the pandemic. So I'm not going to go into history lessons, but because I think that, you know, we've seen a lot of that over the last year. Certainly for me, those that know me, I've been an infection control nurse for 15 years. I guess you never really think about pandemic occurring, but I mean, I worked with a fabulous consultant, and I've said this before, called Dr. Philip Monk. So I know some of you will have known Philip before he retired, and he was a public health consultant, and he used to always say, even when I started right back in 2005, a pandemic will occur. It'll be a case of not if, but when. He always believed that, even right back then. So it's interesting that 15 years later, we found ourselves in this position. I think it's worth noting, though, that there have been pandemics previously, but they only started to be termed as a pandemic in 1918 with Spanish flu, which was the first time it was called a pandemic, and there was over 500 million people that were affected by that, and it killed 20 to 50 million, which was more than World War I, which was at the same time. But also we had things like smallpox, which would have been termed as a pandemic, tuberculosis during the time, which also would have been, and also the Black Death. And I guess one of the pandemics that we tend to not label as such unless it's affected us is HIV and AIDS, and that's still a pandemic that's going on, but we maybe don't think of it in that way, but it's certainly an infectious disease that continues to affect a lot of people across the world, which is what a pandemic is. So which comes from a Greek word, which I'm sure you're aware, which is pan, which is everybody, and then demos, which means group of people. So flu isn't considered a pandemic because it's endemic. So when it's endemic, it means it's within the community at an acceptable, whatever that is, acceptable level. But HIV and AIDS certainly is a pandemic. And since the 1980s, there have been, is it 32 or 38 million, between 32 and 38 million deaths from HIV and AIDS, which is a significant amount. In 2019 alone, there were 695,000 deaths associated with HIV and AIDS. So I think there are other pandemics, but obviously we're focusing on COVID and how that's affected us. But just a bit of food for thought, really, because as nurses, you know, we've got nurses working in all realms of healthcare, not just in this country, but battling, you know, other diseases as well across the world. So it's just something for us to think about as we think we're coming out of COVID and lockdown, and we're feeling a lot more positive, which is fabulous. There are still a lot of countries that obviously either have COVID in significant amounts, or particularly in some of the African continents, HIV and AIDS. So anyway, that's enough of me rattling on. You've not come to listen to me, you've come to listen to our brilliant speakers. So if I can introduce Sam Screaton and Mark Taylor as our first presenters for their session. I'm not sure whether you want. So, okay. So their title is Learning Disability Nursing and the LD COVID-19 Vaccination Programme. So over to you both.
Lovely, thank you. So I'm going to start, and then I'm going to hand over to Mark, and so we're going to give you slightly different perspectives on the same topic, really. So I'm a learning disability primary care liaison nurse, and I sit within the adult learning disability service with an LPT, and I've been in this job for, I think it's 11.5 years now. So I'm kind of going to just start with how I came, you know, where things changed for me as a nurse. Obviously we've all got our own personal and professional journey, I think, with COVID, and it's over a year's worth of journey now, isn't it? But for me, and the topic that we're going to talk about, at the start of the year, when the vaccination programme really started to gather momentum, I felt like as a nurse I wanted to give something back, if you like. So, you know, I wasn't trained as a vaccinator. I haven't done an injection for many years, and it certainly wasn't a vaccination, the last type of injection that I gave. So but I really felt strongly that actually the vaccination programme isn't going to roll out if we don't all go a bit above and beyond and work weekends when we don't normally, or work in the evenings when we don't normally. So I made this kind of personal journey and personal decision, and signed up to be a vaccinator, did all of my training, and it was just around the time that LPT opened the People Centre, and I was asked around that time whether or not I would join the clinical lead team there. So it was a far enough step out of my comfort zone to become a vaccinator, but to then actually become a clinical lead within a vaccination centre was like a massive step. But I kind of embraced it, and you know, the whole way through this journey that I'm talking about, you know, what made that so much easier was I met the most fabulous people working in other parts of LPT that I just would never have met. I haven't met them so far in 11 years, so I probably would never have met them had I not gone to work there. So the other clinical leads and the admin leads and the operational leads and all those other wonderful people, and the vaccinators who were just the most inspiring people. And also quite overwhelming because I've never been near that many members of the general public for a year. So that was fairly full on. So I kind of started there really, probably early February that would be, and very quickly in my day job there were some conversations going on about people with learning disabilities needing access perhaps in a slightly different way to the vaccination and the vaccination programme, and that it perhaps wasn't going to be the case that everybody would just be able to be called into somewhere like the People Centre or one of the other hubs, or that, you know, they might not be able to go and queue up on a Saturday morning at the GP surgery. So there were lots of conversations that I sort of, I suppose, accidentally became involved in, if I'm honest. And because I was working as a clinical lead down there, and I was one of a couple of learning disability nurses, it felt natural that I would sort of get involved in those clinics really. So that's where the next part of my journey, if you like, with the vaccination programme happened. So we'd had agreement actually locally, I think about 2 weeks before the government actually announced that people with a learning disability would move into group 6 for vaccination, that we were just going to do it, we were going to go for it. So some people had sort of been caught up in the care home rollout and supported living, but obviously a lot of people were not. So we set about setting up the learning disability clinics. So we had 6 clinics. We kind of thought about what was it that was going to be different about those clinics. If we were going to bring people to this huge venue, and sometimes, you know, people who've not been out of the house for a year because they've been shielding, because obviously what the guidance for the second lockdown brought with it, which was different to the first lockdown, was that people with Down syndrome were also then being classed as extremely clinically vulnerable, whereas they weren't the first time around. So there were so many things and so many people to think about, and all of their different needs. So essentially we put on the dates. We have so we did, like I say, we did 6 clinics, and actually we're due to do the second dose clinics this week. So they were exactly I want to say 72 days ago, I think 74 days ago. So our second dose clinic starts tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week, and we'll roll out another 6 in total. So we decided we needed to make, I don't know if any of you have been into the People Centre on a busy shift. There's usually 20 vaccinators very busily working. There's all sorts of other people around and about, you know, all of sort of the admin support and doctor, the pharmacist, that, you know, it's quite a busy environment. And then when you start adding in hundreds of members of the general public coming through in really quite succession, very, very busy, can be quite overwhelming. So we immediately gave people longer appointment times. We started to think about who the vaccinators themselves were and their skills and experience. And I'm not going to steal Mark's thunder, because that's where Mark kind of is going to come in a minute. But, you know, we had a number of people like myself had decided as LD nurses they wanted to become vaccinated, which was absolutely great. It meant then we'd got this kind of mixture of skills then that perhaps we wouldn't ordinarily have had. So we were able to mix and match, if you like, the vaccinators in the room. So we reduced it down to 10 rather than 20 vaccinators. People were given either a half an hour or 15-minute appointment. In reality, some people were with us for 5 minutes and some people were with us for 2 hours. We had so many different things happening. You know, if people needed a really quiet little space, they got a really quiet little space, and if people needed an all singing, all dancing group of nurses, then that's what they got as well, and kind of everything in between. We had one of the amazing admin staff, Raj Chudasama, not a nurse, but absolutely stepped up, and you know, you never knew if he was coming as Spider-Man or Superman, but he would turn up and made a big difference for some people that needed a little bit of a distraction. Or, you know, some of the people came to the first clinic, they came to the second clinic, they came to the third clinic, and on the third time, with their Emla cream, because we've made a quick call to the GP in between, they came back and they did it, and they felt like superheroes, and so there was lots of celebrating, and to then have their picture with Superman or Spider-Man or whoever on the day. So yeah, so it was for me personally as a nurse, a fantastic journey that kind of started in one direction and went in another direction, and I suppose just lucky timing for me really, that as I was working down there as a clinical lead, kind of giving my bit back to the vaccination programme, this opportunity really to be really involved in the learning disability clinics. And I can honestly say I've been qualified 20 years in October, and those clinics were some of the best days of my career without a doubt, and I am so excited to see people back tomorrow. I'm going to be really honest, there'll be some people, it was perhaps more luck than judgment that they had their first vaccination, and we'll just see how it goes. But I think, well, I'm going to hand over to Mark at this point to talk about it from his perspective and kind of how he felt about it really. So I've had my 10 minutes, Mark. I'm going to hand over to you.
Hi Sam, thank you. I'm Mark. I'm a community learning disability nurse from the West Leicestershire team based in Hinckley. I've not been in this job as many years as Sam, coming up to 3 years, and all my career has been in the community. And the one thing I've loved about the community is the team spirit and the variety, but a lot of the work we do is over long periods of time, and we have a lot of time to establish therapeutic relationships with people with learning disabilities, which is so important for people with learning disabilities, because they haven't had the best experiences with the healthcare system potentially, and I think that's why the vaccination program worked, particularly for LD. Initially, I was so surprised and shocked, and also you know, in awe of how quickly this was put together, to the extent it was a matter of emails, and then the whole of LPT was involved in my eyes, because my team, we had 3 people taken out of the community LD team, and we still had to manage our caseload, which put extra pressure on our team, even though it was for a relatively short amount of time. And that was just amazing, it really was. And then when it come together, initially I started with vaccinating the general public. I'd never done any kind of vaccinating before, pushed through all the e-learning, but it wasn't until I got on the shop floor that I'd heard a lot of things about how nice it was, and nice is a too simple a word for people centre, because it really was fantastic. Like Sam said, I didn't know anybody from Adam really, but you were just instantly, even the shadow shift where we had to be taught how to vaccinate, considering the pressure. My sign-off mentor was outstanding, and then you're meeting so many other people, but I just love the experience and of building relationships in a matter of 7 minutes, whereas usually I'm used to doing that over a period of 7 months, and then come along the learning disability clinics, and nobody really knew how it was going to work. With the best will in the world, it was, we're just playing it by ear, and I really enjoyed that, because I think, I don't know whether people realise, but as an LD nurse, 50% of our job is thinking outside the box on the spot, because people with learning disabilities have various different communication needs and health needs, and in the vaccination clinic we don't get an awful lot of information other than perhaps a short sentence to say whether they need space or quiet or out in the car, and things change so dynamically. But I was just so impressed by how quickly everybody else adapted. And as LD nurses, that's our job. Our role is to be adaptable. Our role is to form them relationships pretty quickly and assess what we're going to have to adapt. But to have regular vaccinators that have never actually seen, probably worked with people with learning disabilities, to step up to the mark was absolutely fantastic. And just to name some of the few, like I'll get it involved, but I bought some new shoes which were quite loud, and me and the doctor decided that we were going to tap dance, and I tell you what, it worked a treat. And that just how many people just stepped up to the mark was just, I think I said it to Sam and other people, in my short career, I think that those were the best 6 days of my nursing career, and they're going to take some to top, because I think it shows when people are on the same page and have a shared goal. It's just awesome, and that's really all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, well, I was just going to say, Sam, Mark, it's never just all you've got to say. It's the start of a journey. So, yeah, you should both be very proud of yourselves. So, Sam, sorry, yes, of course.
I was just going to say, I think one of the, we sort of accidentally managed to kind of blow up the staff Facebook page a little bit, because it became very quickly apparent that actually people right across the trust were very interested in this, and actually also, unbeknown to us, there are lots of parents of people with learning disabilities who work in our trust, and they'd already been through the clinics. And so when we sort of started to pop little bits of, what a great day it's been, what a brilliant clinic, here's Spider-Man, it kind of, and so we ended up with ITV down there, we ended up with BBC down there. We ended up, I was on BBC Radio Leicester on the breakfast show with a wonderful self-advocate, Shamima, who lives in the city. And I think, it's not to underestimate the journey that people with learning disabilities went on to come to that clinic. Some of the families, I remember a mum and daughter is actually the lady that was on the telly and had the interview. She came through, in fact, I would imagine she's due back this week. She came, and they literally had been sent the link about 2 hours before, and they booked it, got in the car, and they came, and they said, we'd have walked from Melton Mowbray to get here. We've just been waiting for this. And so then when BBC said they were coming and they wanted to interview somebody, I just knew if I rang her up and said, do you want to be on the telly, she would be back, and she was, and did a fabulous interview. But there were some people that was a really, really big, hard thing for them to do, and for them to be there with us. And it took several visits for some people to, be able to allow us near enough to them to be able to work with them in that way. And like Mark said, usually you have so much more time to take care over building that relationship. And, I think we kind of, when we decided that we were going to reduce the number of vaccinators down to 10 rather than 20 to try and sort of keep the room a little bit quieter and calmer, that one of the fabulous things, because, being there as a clinical lead, I was just kind of running around, just checking everybody was okay, and trying to sort of anticipate people's needs and what was, we needed to do in 10 minutes time kind of thing. So what was amazing and wonderful for me to see was that actually, the vaccinators who were not learning disability nurses, everybody just, sometimes they'd not worked together before, but we did our little huddle at the start and said, these are the sorts of things. People were really worried about how to work with somebody who lacks capacity to consent, for example, to having the vaccination, and that was a big concern. Whereas for a learning disability nurse, like we're okay with that. And I think one of the wonderful things sometimes it was the non-learning disability nurse that was the vaccinator, but the learning disability nurse from the station next door, they were working as a team and they were together, and just seeing how people could just very quickly switch around what they needed to do. And you know, I think there was one lady in particular wanted a male vaccinator, and I think, you know, having Mark there on hand was just, so we were just able to meet lots of different needs in lots of different ways, is what I'm trying to say. So
I mean, that's brilliant, and obviously, you know, we could listen to you. There's obviously lots, and you can tell how excited and how proud you both are, really. So, you know, thank you for sharing that. And obviously we need to move on, but I'm sure there'll be other times for you to share that enthusiasm as well. So well done. And I think, didn't Jo Wiley, didn't she tweet or something about the People's Centre as well for the vaccination?
Times, yeah, she did.
So well done both, and thank you very much for sharing that, and obviously recognising as well all the people behind in the background that supported that as well, which is fabulous. So I think, you know, not just in Leicestershire but nationally as a country, we've done phenomenally well with the vaccination programme. I think we should all be really proud to be part of it, even if that's just you having your vaccine. So you know, really, really good. So anyway, moving on. Our next speakers are Lisa. I see that you've been able to join us, which is lovely. Hiya. So we've got Leslie Tooley, who's the Quality Accreditation Matron, and Lisa Smythe, who's Deputy Ward Sister. They're going to be talking about looking after wellbeing and resilience and their experience of being redeployed and the experience that they've taken away from that. So over to you both.
Okay.
Hi.
Hello, Leslie.
Hi, Lisa. Can you take the slide down, Anita? So we can see the lovely Lisa.
Oh.
So if you, Anita, have you got our slide with Lisa's picture on? No. Anyway. So I'll just open us up to say, then I'm going to hand you over to Lisa. So Lisa and I met when we were redeployed to work on Charnwood Ward, which was the surge ward open to take extra capacity for COVID positive patients. And this is the lovely Lisa getting her Cavell star, which she got while she was on the ward. And you can take down the horrible picture of me looking more like my mother every day. And then we've got another photograph of Lisa, because I want to mention Lisa's star in case you don't mention it. This is Lisa receiving her star on the ward, which is a great moment, really, and I hope you're really proud for it. I know your mum and dad were really pleased, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. It was lovely.
So I'm going to hand you over to Lisa to talk about our experience of being redeployed.
Hello, everyone. So basically, how it all started was I was on annual leave in December, and I got a call from my boss saying that I'd been risk assessed and that I would be moving to a red ward. So I was fine with that. It's one of those things, and I don't think we should choose who we can look after. So I was quite happy to move to a red ward. Before I moved to a red ward, though, I got coronavirus myself. So after that, I went straight to Clarendon Ward, that was at work at Red Ward at the time, and then I moved to Charnwood Ward at Loughborough Hospital, which was the surge ward. Initially, I was quite nervous about going because I didn't know anyone, not one single person who worked there. So it was quite daunting, and I've been in this trust for 20 years and been on Beechwood Ward for the last 8 years now. So I've not really moved, apart from helping out with the wards, anywhere for a long time. But we got lucky straight away, because there was Leslie, there was Sarah Lowe, and they were absolutely brilliant. They really made a team out of, literally, it was all agency, apart from myself and a couple of other substantive nurses. So sometimes it was quite overwhelming, but we managed to create a good team with agency staff block booking. And by the end of the 3 months that we were there, we were all really firm friends. And what could have been a really sad, distressing time was actually one of the highlights of my career. And I ended up enjoying going into work, looking after the patients. At times it was quite overwhelming. I remember one Saturday, and there was me, and it was all agency, and I think all of my patients were triggering on the EWS, so they were all really poorly. They were all on oxygen. We had out of hours at doctor out to, I think, every single one of them, and you just think, oh, you know, when's this all going to end? And there were other sad times as well, not just on Charnwood Ward, in the early days of COVID on my own ward, Beechwood, but we managed to get through it. We all supported each other. It was just a friendly team. And if there was any worries or concerns, we could always talk to each other, air our feelings, and it was lovely. And we were all sad when we left to go back to our original jobs. And it's made people have a bit more of a perspective on what they want to do in the future. And I've certainly changed how I practice as well. You come back with like a fresh idea of how other teams work. It challenges you in yourself to be able to make new friends, run new teams. So it's a really positive experience on what was quite a sad time, stressful time. I don't know if you felt the same, Leslie.
Definitely. I mean, for those that don't know me, I'm on secondment to be accreditation matron, and I started in January. By March, it was all on hold. So it's been a bit of a funny year for me. I've been bitten and bobbing all year. So I volunteered to go and get the ward ready to be opened. Really quite nervous because it's 31 years to the week that I left a ward and gone on community. So I haven't been on a ward for 31 years. And I really, it was to say it was a shock was a massive understatement. I'd got so many concerns and worries, you know, everything from how much would it have changed? Would patient care be different? How would I cope with all the electronic stuff? Because it's all new. Would we have the patients? Would they be really poorly? My family were really worried about me catching COVID. So that added another layer of concern. But actually, it's turned out to be a highlight of my career as well. And it was a really fantastic 3 months. I think the picture that we haven't shown is the MDT, but for me, it's been a real multidisciplinary team event, because when you're on a COVID ward and you get locked in for the day because you can't come and go, you have to kind of muddle through together. And so the physios would hand out the meals, the physios would take people to the toilet, we would be doing physio with the physios. We were all housekeeper for the day at some point. We were all cleaner for the day at some point, because nobody could be precious about the jobs that needed to be done. And I just really enjoyed getting back down to doing basic nursing care. It was a real thing for me. I've also learned quite a few things, and there's quite a few things I want to try and put right if we can going forward, because my worry is that if this happens again, we're all going to be in this situation, and I think we could do with being better prepared. So I'd be really interested to know what people think about things like how we can get staff better prepared, because some of the staff that were redeployed to us were not given much warning. They weren't shown a lot of kindness. They weren't necessarily, for instance, not being told what their shifts would be, whereas we said, look, if you've got shifts booked, we'll honour whatever you've got, we'll work around you. People were coming to us with their own, they'd been working on a ward for X amount of years, they've got routine and flex, and they wanted to know if we could be as flexible, or if they could pick the child up on a Monday at 3 o'clock, which is their normal routine. There were lots and lots of fears that hadn't really been answered until they arrived with us. And it felt like we were doing a lot of nurturing and a lot of working with people to try and get that happen. It never occurred to me and Sarah that we wouldn't honour people's annual leave, or some managers were very good, is all I can want to say. And so I think we just need to think about how we get staff prepared and how we can do that. So do we move people around more often? Because as we've all said, it's actually been a great experience, all this moving about, and yet we all dread it, don't we? We all dread change and a change to disruption and routine. But actually, it's been great. It's been a real highlight. The reliance on agency, I can't tell you about, blew my mind. It's like juggling jellyfish, not going to turn up every day. And how ward managers do it on a daily basis, I do not know, because every minute of every day we were worried about who was going to turn up and who wasn't. So you do become very insular, and that was been a worry for me, is that in the 3 months I was there, all I cared about was what was happening on Charnwood Ward. You almost forget. So there's a lot of stuff happens in LPT for the good that nobody knew about, because you just worried about your own little bubble. So I think it's been really good to share experiences and how we can move around that. Other than that, take the leap of faith and enjoy, because it has been really great, hasn't it, Lisa?
Yeah, it has been good, definitely. And we've made a lot of friends.
And what I did learn was that patient care hasn't changed in 31 years. It's still get up, wash, feed, therapy, repeat. So it was just great to get back, but the electronic stuff's another minefield.
So Leslie, is it worth just, you talked about the team, well, both of you have talked about working with the team, and I think actually, you've raised some really powerful things for us to think about in terms of looking after ourselves, how we support each other, and how we don't get maybe entrenched in our day-to-day and not think of each other. But I just wondered, I know that you shared it at the last meeting I was at around your discussion with the cleaner, because I think it is about how we work as a team and we don't get too blindsided, if you like, in just our own little roles. And for me, I guess what I would say is with Lisa and Leslie, and I know Sarah because of the award that you all won, is true leadership to me. That is, looking after those people the staff on a daily basis. And I think that's what makes a great nurse, because it comes naturally to you. But if you want to share your story about the cleaner.
Well, I will. So we had lots of agency cleaners and people who came onto the ward. Of course, they were all coming onto a COVID ward, so they're all really nervous. But there was a lady, she was putting curtains up actually, before any patients arrived, and I'd been to her and said, we're all going to just take a coffee break now. Are you coming to join us? And she said, oh, no. I said, oh, come and join us. And long story short, she burst into tears and said, no, in 23 years, nobody had ever made her feel like part of a team. And nobody had ever invited her to go and have coffee with the rest of the team. It really upset me, to be honest. I was a bit shocked, because it never occurred to me that she wasn't part of our team. But she was really humble. I was really humbled by it, and she was really humbled. It was an eye-opener for me that she'd worked for our organisation for such a long time. And okay, she wasn't part of a big team, but to me, she was part of our team, part of the ward team. And I think everybody felt like that, Lisa, didn't they? Everybody who came, whether it was the engineer who came to fix the toilet, everybody was part of our little COVID crew. In fact, that was our password. Shouldn't share passwords, but a COVID crew was how we felt, really. We were all in it together.
I think it was quite isolating working on a COVID ward as well. Not just because in the hospital no one wants to come near you, but even when you're at home. I mean, I've seen people in the supermarket, and apart from the 2 meters apart, they'd stand about 5 meters apart as soon as you whisper that you work on a COVID ward. So there was a lot of stigma attached to it. And even my own family, they're really cautious when they saw me and that kind of thing. So it was quite isolating, and it was, I don't know, I think it must have been scary for a lot of the staff. I was okay with it, but I know a lot of people were bothered by that aspect of it as well.
Yeah, and I think, going forward, it's a really good point, actually. And, we see a lot of media about nurses and staff working on wards and how fabulous. But everyone's human and we all have families or friends or pets or, you know, and so you have those anxieties yourself. And I think it is important to recognise that and, you know, look after each other. And sometimes I think having your family at home whilst you might live them, they still don't have any real understanding maybe of the job that you do. And you know, the impact that can have on you. And I think it's why it's so important that we do look after each other. And I think sorry, I'm showing my age, the old way of working, I mean, when I worked on ITU, our domestics, the cleaners, they were the best part of our team. They looked after the relatives, they made the tea, the coffee, they calmed everybody down, you know, and we have, in some respects, I think modernisation has changed that, but hopefully what's really inspiring is for all the speakers that we've had, and we'll come to our last one in a minute, is that actually the pandemic, whilst it's been potentially horrific for a lot of families and nationally and internationally, the positivity and the feelings and the care that people feel and have shown is really quite inspiring, isn't it? I mean, I'll be honest, I think it was Sam talked about meeting lots of people. I mean, I've worked in infection control X amount of years as trust, and I've got a team, and some of them are on the call as well today. So, but suddenly, you know, I've never had such a good contact list in my phone in all my life. Everybody wants to know you. So I'm not sure that is a good thing, but it's been a great networking opportunity. So I think it's about looking at what the positives are and what the things are that, you know, we could do better on, or we want to change or help and support. So food for thought, really. So that's lovely. So Leslie and Lisa, thank you. That was really inspiring as well. And I think the point about the rotation, Leslie, is really key as well. Staff moving. I know certainly it's something that we did in a previous job I did, because it takes that anxiety to a level away, and actually it creates quite an excitement of new experiences. So, you know,
what I haven't got my head round about is how practical it is, but I do think we need to do something, because God forbid that this happens again. We need to do more so we're not so reliant on agency staff.
I mean, rotational posts are a really good idea, and some people love them, some people don't, but hey, you know, give it some thought, food for thought.
And the other controversial thing I just like to throw into the mix, I think it would be good to have some of our senior staff doing that as well, because so that they're ready and prepared to go and work on awards should the need be, because they're the role models and those with the people with perhaps confidence to say, no, we can take that risk, or
yeah.
So I think we need to think about all the way up.
Definitely. Great point. Okay, lovely. Thank you both. So we've got our last speaker who, although isn't here in person, has kindly put a video together for us because she was unable to make the time due to an overlap of appointments. So it's Helen Litton. Some of you may know Helen. She works at the university at De Montfort, and her speech is lessons that she's learned during COVID as a nursing lecturer at the university. So if you could play that, please, Anita, that would be brilliant.
Hello, I'm Helen Litton. I'm one of the adult nursing lecturers at De Montfort University. Before I started at De Montfort, my background is district nursing with LPT. My role at De Montfort obviously involves teaching. I teach pre-registration nurses and post-reg nurses, and also some allied health professionals as I teach on the non-medical prescribing module. I'm a personal tutor for a small cohort of students. They started with me in September, and I'll be their personal tutor for the whole 3 years that they are at De Montfort training to be nurses. It's quite an interesting part of my role. It's very much pastoral. We offer pastoral care to these students, and I'm learning that as a personal tutor, it's a mixture of being both a parent to the students and also Google. I'm part of the first year academic assessors group, and this work actually has really pleased me. The students have all been exceptionally apprehensive about going into placement, as you can understand, but all of the students that have been on placement have given fantastic feedback about how well they've been supported. Some of these students have had no care experience, whether that's in residential homes or as HCAs, and they've just gone on the wards or into the community, and all of their practice supervisors and practice assessors have been exceptionally supportive, and that's been really good to hear. So how has the pandemic affected my role? That's really hard for me to say, because I started at De Montfort University in February 2020, so I was a few weeks in post before lockdown happened. So for me and my role, I'm used to, it's natural for me to teach online, to work from home, to have Teams meetings with students. So this is my norm, if you like. It's been quite a steep learning curve, learning to deliver a lecture online. I don't have any children at home anymore, they've all left, so I haven't had anybody with any technical abilities to help me with anything. So I think I've stalked our IT team, and I'm probably blocked by them by now. Teaching online obviously has its challenges. Internet connections, the virtual platform that we use through Blackboard sometimes can crash. It doesn't like you giving a lecture for too long, because then everything freezes. So there have been challenges, and that obviously passes on to the students, challenges to the students. This doesn't necessarily apply to me, but for some of us teaching at home and while children have been at home, that's been a challenge to some of the lecturers as well. I remember one of my colleagues saying she was trying to give a lecture while her 2-year-old was having a meltdown. Another problem that's been experienced by some of my colleagues is we don't always teach what's appropriate for young children to hear. Most of nursing, most of adult nursing, mental health nursing, it is a challenge. We talk about suicide, we talk about end of life, we talk about dying, and that's not the way we need to deliver that to adult students, isn't appropriate for young children to hear. So that's also been a challenge to some of my colleagues. I do miss that face-to-face interaction that you have by giving a lecture, especially with the post-registrants, because the groups tend to be a little bit smaller. And delivering online, it's really difficult to encourage participation, to encourage contribution. Certainly with the pre-reg nurses, they are very comfortable, very happy to drop a question into the chat box, but don't like coming on to even discuss. They certainly won't ever want to take their videos and show the videos. So that's been really challenging, delivering to people that you can't see and you can't hear. I've personally found that quite difficult. And also working from home, I found, rather than being in an office, for me has meant that there's nobody the other side of the door for me to just quickly nip and ask a question to. You have to email somebody, then you have to wait for a response before you can implement their solution or their help. So that's been quite difficult, and that impromptu clinical supervision that you get by working with your colleagues has been missing as well. As a probation, while I was been in probation, I've been very well supported by staff, but it's still only a pre-booked appointment and an MS Teams meeting. We have, as you may be aware, really tried hard to deliver, as a faculty, we've tried hard to deliver live lectures. What we mean by that is a little bit of what I'm doing now. We are there as lecturers live, and the students will come into the virtual classroom to observe the lecture. These are all then recorded as we produce them, as we are giving the lecture, and then students can then refresh themselves, go back and look at the recording. That has obviously meant that it's difficult for us to understand or measure even student engagement and student knowledge. When you're in a classroom delivering a lecture, you can see how engaged students are. I've observed lectures when I was newly qualified, when I was new to DMU, and students have literally fallen asleep. So you can't really tell that when you're delivering a lecture where you can't see anybody, nobody's cameras are on, nobody's speaking to you. And sometimes it's been interesting when the lecture is finished and I've just stayed on for 10, 15, 20 minutes, and there are some students that have not logged off at the end of that session. So you question how much they've actually attended, how much they've seen. Because of that, we're having to put more knowledge checks in place to see how they are progressing with their knowledge and understanding their academic work. Written assignments have been a challenge, and for some of our students as well. Within my personal tutor group, I have one mature student, and she has 4 children, a 2-year-old and 3 children that are at school. So when schools were not open, all of her children were at home. They have one computer between the whole family. And it meant for her that she wasn't starting to write her assignments till after 10 at night, when her children have done all their homework. We know of some students that have been writing their assignments on a smartphone because there's been no access to the library. So lockdown and the COVID and how that has affected our students has been quite significant, more specifically to the pre-reg students. Obviously, for exams, we've had to change those, and they've become an open book assignment, which the students have found quite challenging, to be honest. You would have thought that a change from an exam to an open book assignment would be preferable, I suppose, but a lot of students do enjoy an exam. Don't know why, but that has been quite a challenge for our students. As a personal tutor, and also across all of the faculty, we've noticed this. Student mental health has been significantly impacted with COVID, and that's not just peculiar to student nurses. We know that that's happening across the whole of the nations, really, well, I suppose across the world, because of the pandemic. That lack of interaction, that lack of being with people, that lack of human contact has significantly affected people. You know, I remember as a student nurse, almost every day when you're in university, it's a clinical supervision. You're talking about your placement, you're talking about your assignments, you're talking about life, and you know, those bonds that you develop in your nurse trainings. Some of my friends I met while I was doing my nurse training, and they're still very close, good friends now after all these years. And the students that are coming in now haven't got that interaction, haven't got that peer support from each other, and that's been quite a challenge for them. So, as you can probably imagine, the pandemic has had the biggest effect on our students. Initially, when the pandemic hit, when lockdown hit last March, all of the first years were taken out of placement for various reasons. Predominantly, practice was very much under under a massive pressure, and student nurses, certainly first year student nurses, do need extra support and more of a one-to-one support and development, really. So all of first years were taken out, and we had to rejig the whole programme, the whole 3-year programme. So a lot of their academic work was brought into that first year to allow and facilitate more of their practice experience a bit later on. Obviously, this then impacts on practice, and I'm sure you're all aware of perhaps a greater number of students, and certainly within the community, how that's affected the practice supervisor, practice assessor role within caring for and developing student nurses. Third year students who met a very specific and very strict criteria were supported in being deployed by LPT and UHL. And on the whole, feedback from students who were able to do this showed that they developed a higher level of resilience, and they were really supported. And really importantly, I think, to a lot of the students, they felt that they were contributing to the pandemic. To help manage practice hours, we've increased reflective hours for students, and they've gone from 2.5 to 5 hours a week. De Montfort was one of the few universities who've managed this year to ensure that all of our students are in placements, and that is down to our practice team, but more specifically down to the practice partner organisations being exceptionally creative and dynamic in supporting and helping the students. We have about 50 students that have been off sick because of COVID or are shielding because of COVID, and they're carrying on their learning outcomes and their practice hours. One of the problems that we've had are high-risk students and finding appropriate low-risk placements. The very fact that we're all clinical, that you're all clinical, means that there's a risk of COVID anywhere. For the post-registrants, the challenge has been different, because the challenge to them has been juggling practice with all the added pressures that COVID has had, and online learning. However, I think the online learning and that ability to log on has been, rather than physically attend university, has actually been of a benefit to the post-reg students. And they have engaged, some of them have attended lectures while they're at work. They've been released while at work to attend a 2-hour lecture. So that has really been beneficial with them. But again, with the pre-reg students, it's that struggle, that lack of peer support, because they aren't in the university, they aren't with their colleagues, they aren't with their peers, and that clinical supervision, certainly within stressful programs like the district nursing course that I teach on, and also the non-medical prescribing, where it's very intense. The students have struggled with that lack of peer support. So that's a very quick overview of how the pandemic has affected us at De Montfort University, how it's affected me. It'll be interesting to see moving forward in a few days when partial lockdowns lifted, and then in June, if we get there, how that's going to affect us. What our new norm's going to be. But it's exciting times, exceptionally challenging times. But for me personally, being able to support students, support developing nurses, supporting pre-reg nurses is an absolute privilege, and I thoroughly enjoy it. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Anita. Lovely. If we can just take the slide down. So I know, it's a shame Helen's not with us, actually, because there was a few questions I would have liked to ask her, but I think she raised some really interesting points that maybe we don't always think about. I mean, my sister is actually a university lecturer, a nursing lecturer, and it's made me think more about her and maybe some of the issues that she might have, because I know the Zoom calls and things have been interesting. So actually, you know, it's real food for thought. And the falling asleep one, I mean, I've certainly done lectures, I don't know about you guys, in big lecture theatres, and I remember one time somebody coming in late, and a colleague I was teaching with, they were like 40 minutes late, and they were like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and she went, "Well, you don't look very sorry." So it's like it's a real challenge, isn't it, sometimes, to create that that excitement, that opportunity. And we all remember, I mean, I'm old enough, we had clinical tutors that worked with us on wards, which I'm showing my age, but different opportunities. And yeah, sorry, it just makes me smile. So just before we finish, is there any questions that anybody has or would like to raise to any of the speakers? Or if there's any for Helen, we can always put people in touch with her. So I'm just grateful that she's done that. But you can either put them in the chat box or, oh, Asha.
Yeah, I just wanted to say how inspired I am, and also nursing and the business of nursing will always be the same, no matter how much technology you put on it. It has to come from the heart, and it's about our attitudes, our behaviours. And I'm so glad that Leslie got to share her experience about being inclusive, because one part of the jigsaw is only a small part. You need the whole. So, you know, I would have loved to have been part of the vaccination centre, but unfortunately I'm in that block that I have to shield, so I couldn't be that. But the camaraderie of nursing and nurses is still there, and it'll be the same in 30 years' time as it was 30 years ago. So thank you so much.
Yeah, lovely, thank you. Leslie?
Mine was just a comment, really, that the things that Helen has said in my previous role as clinical educator, just people, you know, people falling asleep, and our educators in LPT who day after day are trying to do all these things via team meetings, just feel the pain and put a smile on the face, because it's such a harrowing. I can just imagine talking to a blank screen. It must be hideous. Yeah. I know what it was like doing it in real life, so I can only imagine. So I do feel Helen's pain.
Yeah, yeah. It gives another dimension, doesn't it, about when you're doing it day in, day out, and how you create that support and enthusiasm. But also often when you're doing teaching or learning with people, you work off each other, and that can be lost sometimes, can't it, with things like Teams. So I think we miss that. So we've got some lovely comments, and thank you everyone. I just wanted, it was interesting, a quote that I'd seen. It hasn't got a name, but it's about, because we've talked about learning from the pandemic and the last year, and I guess we've all got lots of stories to continue with, but somebody had put a quote on saying, when I heard 2020 was going to be the year of the nurse, this is not what I expected. So I think, it's just so true, isn't it? But actually, it's been sad, but it's helped a lot of people to really shine or find their true, I don't know whether you say vocation, nature or nurture. I'm not sure what people feel on that, but, that passion from within, and it's what you want to do. So, sorry, Mark, you've got your hand up, and would you like to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it doesn't matter what branch of nursing we're from, whether we're learning disability nurses, mental health, children's, adults, and it's been hard on everybody. But the one thing I've noticed is it doesn't matter. We do it. We get it done by hook or crook. As nurses, we all muddle together, and we use everything we've got, everything in our disposal, and we just do it because we have no choice. What do? Just go and do nothing. So Yeah,
And I
I've loved
guess,
it.
you know, you do a lot of it, you do it because you want to, it's what draws you back day in, day out. We all have bad days, don't we, like everybody else, but actually there'll be a little nugget of something, or somebody says something and you think, yeah, you know, I've had a really good day today. So so I hope that you've enjoyed the session, and there's another one tomorrow which Emma is overseeing, and of course it is actually Nurses Day tomorrow, so I hope you're all celebrating in some shape or form, even if it is a gin and tonic maybe, or a nice fruit shoot or something, or whatever floats your boat. So enjoy, and thanks very much for all your participation, and thank you very much to all the speakers. You've been inspiring. Thank you. Have a good day.